Hello and welcome to SnykLIVE. I'm Brian Clark, and we're going to be learning about malicious NPM packages, in particular, how someone's NPM package will eat your lunch. I don't know what that means and how an NPM package can eat my lunch, but I'm very curious based on that title, exactly how that's going to be possible. As a developer myself, I use NPM packages all the time. I build Node apps quite a bit, open source, personal projects on the side and for work. And I need to make sure, and we all need to make sure as developers that we're not accidentally installing malicious NPM packages, or maybe ones that we trust already could be malicious as well. I don't know, but I'm eager to find out more and to help myself and you all find out more about this topic in particular. We have a special guest joining us today, and that is ZB. Let's bring ZB on. Hey, ZB, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm good, thanks.
Thank you
So
so
yeah, I've
much.
been installing NPM packages for my entire career, more or less. So that's something that I think everyone has in common.
Yeah. And I've been doing that blindly, though. Like, I just say NPM install, whatever the name is, and I just hit go, and I'm like, okay, and I start using it, and then I'm happy. But I feel like maybe that's not the safest way to go about things.
Well, the first, I think the first public information about that not being the best approach surfaced around 2016 or something.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, before that, like in 2015, I would install a lot of NPM packages and be very happy about it, giving them access to everything. It used to be fairly common to run sudo npm install.
Yes.
You wanted a global package because, why not? Yeah.
You're right. I forgot about that, actually. Those are fun times forcing that stuff to happen. So cool. But before we get deep into things, I wanna get to know you a bit more. I'm sure other folks want to as well that might be tuning in. So tell us a little bit about you, your background, how you got into doing this kind of stuff, and a focus on security too.
Okay. So I'm gonna start in the middle. So I've been a software engineer for quite a while now, doing JavaScript first on the front end, then got interested in Node around version 0.8, and that became the core of my career for quite a while. Built some teams, built some applications, and team led some of that. And at some point, it became obvious that we need to look at security more. So there was Node Security Project. That was my first attempt at doing anything security-wise. It was running Node Security Project's CLI on our dependencies. That was before NPM Audit. And then we quickly switched to NPM Audit, set it up to run in CI, and that's when Adam Baldwin automated finding vulnerabilities in regular expressions. So we had multiple failed CI runs in a week just because of that. And that's what triggered my interest in building security tools. And it went on to a point where I'm now building security tools full time. But at some point, I realized that I was into JavaScript security before I knew any JavaScript or security.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because the first ever bit of JavaScript that I wrote was actually a set timeout in a function that would invoke that function twice.
Oh, okay.
And it would crash Internet Explorer, including the entire explorer.exe process on Windows 98 and XP. So you had to either reboot or start a new Explorer process manually.
Nice.
Because something would overflow, and they only fixed it in Service Pack 2.
Wow.
So that was my first ever JavaScript, and it was malicious already. And then I forgot all about it, and went into a career years later. And then this one time when I was getting ready for a conference, I put that on a slide when I recalled It's yeah, it's been like 18 years ago or something.
Wow, nice.
I don't
Yeah.
know, ages, ages.
Yeah. That's wow. So there's a lot to unpack there that I wanna ask you more about. So, you know what's always interesting to me? And I'm guilty of this as myself, is like we always those of us that are like have developed in Node, we always talk about when we started using what version of Node we started using it. So I like that's quite impressive, 0.8. I
It's
thought I
like
was
geological layers.
yeah, yes. I was when you said that, I was like, "Oh, wow, you got me beat," because I started around 0.10, uh, when I was
0.10 is a very thick layer. So between me starting at the late 0.8 and then switching over to 0.10, I would then use 0.10 for the next 4 years or so.
Yep.
So yeah, I would also refer to 0.10 because this was my first Node.js version actually in production.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just such a thick geological layer.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like how you put it that way, that it's like a geological layer. It's a great way to describe it. Yeah, we pinned at, 0 we pinned version of Node to 0.10.36 is what we wanted to, like, focus on for production for that, and then, anything up from there in terms of, the patch version that might come out for it. Um Yeah. So interesting times, and it's quite thinking back, you bringing up that version and everything like that, you just got me reminiscent of all the fun experience and how I'm sure you can attest to this too, the lack of tooling, developer tools that were available then, or at least how like, in terms of, like, how rich of an ecosystem that we have
Yeah.
now in terms of tooling versus back in that point in time when back in my day, like, we had to scrap things together with 15 different apps, and that we didn't have, like, a cohesive developer tools that we have today that,
Oh,
you
who
know
need developer tools if you can console log?
Right. Yes, exactly, yeah. Um, cool, so and then you bring up the Node security project, which I do recall that, and I'm a huge fan of. I didn't realize that you, worked on that, so thank you for that because
No,
it was
I didn't work on that. I
oh,
used it
oh, you used
early
it,
on.
okay, okay.
Yeah, it was a bit too short-lived for me to even get to a point where I would come up with the idea of joining. But yeah, later on, I tried joining a few things, and maybe I will finally succeed on the Node.js security working group or something. We'll see.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Well, I guess a real quick thing with the Node security project, right? In case people aren't familiar with that, that was a CLI tool that would help bring awareness to and alert developers of vulnerable packages. And then that I forget exactly when it happened. Maybe you can keep me honest here, but that ended up getting absorbed into NPM, right? And it's a part of
Correct.
NPM itself, and that's what we see today as NPM audit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the small team building that project, they wanted some sustainability, and the easiest option to make it sustainable and to add more people on to focus on it was to put that into NPM, because NPM at the time saw it as a potential monetization strategy, as far as I
Oh,
remember.
okay.
Yeah, to maybe monetize on top of audit, but they were probably too honest with themselves to really pull that through. Because why limit access to something like that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes. Cool. All right, and then you mentioned that you worked on something called an audit resolver. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Let's
Yep.
transition into that.
So that's the follow up to the story about new vulnerabilities popping up more and more. So at some point, it was so difficult to have NPM audit running in CI and getting everything fixed and making the build green that the team started pushing to remove it. Because every
Oh, wow.
time we wanted to push the last minute changes, because Scrum has a demo day, and on a demo day you need to show stuff working in staging, and before it goes to staging it needs to build, before it builds it needs to install packages, and we have a guard there that turns everything red. So everyone hated it. And so I sat down one evening, and in the confines of my hobby time, I just wrote an early version of NPM Audit-resolver, which would take the NPM audit, and it had actually two parts to it. So first, you would go through an interactive CLI and decide which of the things you want to ignore and how. So there's a postpone 24 days. So just ignore for a short while because it's the demo day, and then ignore permanently or for a month to manage. And that's actually, so the tool is there to make those decisions, write them to a file. The file is formatted so that git blame tells you who made which decision. And the commit message potentially has some context for that. And then there's the other CLI that you run in CI, which wraps NPM audit, reads from NPM audit, and filters out stuff that you've decided to ignore. And that's basically it, with some more features that I find unnecessary nowadays. I'm trying to back out of them. But the biggest feature there was it would not just ignore the vulnerability by name of the package or the type of vulnerability. Because with Node Security Project, you could ignore a certain category, like regular expression denial of service, which we did. But what if you have a dev dependency that depends on the package with redos vulnerability, and you ignore that, and then your core server component depends on something, and the new version of that library includes the one that you've already ignored in your dependencies. It means now your decision would have been different. So I want my tool to not ignore that one. So I wouldn't ignore by vulnerability and package name, but I would ignore by dependency path and vulnerability ID. And this is still the biggest value of NPM Audit-resolver to date.
Gotcha. That's cool. That's really interesting. And I'm when you're talking about agile methodologies and you're getting towards the end of the sprint and all that stuff, like you got me reminiscent about those times. And I'm sure there's folks that are actively listening and watching to this that are like, yep, definitely feel you on that, DB.
Yeah. Yeah, the last day of the sprint is where all of your best security practices go out the window.
Yeah.
So, so I built the tool not to be a security tool, but to be a security posture building tool. Because you can make exceptions when you really have other priorities. And while not necessarily the best decision, it's your decision to ignore security for a moment.
Right.
But the tool will make you come back to it soon enough. And that was the biggest thing for me and hopefully my team.
Do you have I imagine this is up on GitHub, the audit resolver?
Yeah, it's on NPM and GitHub, and it's called npm-audit-resolver.
All right, I'm gonna get I want to share a link in the chat with everybody, so I'm gonna look for that real quick. Unless you have a link handy. Audit-resolver.
I can dig it up.
I got it.
Okay.
From your GitHub account. I beat you. I had a head start though. All right, dropping that in the chat for people to check out. And then posting up on the screen here for people that are watching the recording.
Yay.
There we
Publicity. Go. Oh, by the way, yes. The next major version is in the making. It's almost done, and it's been like that for a while. Open source hobby time. But yeah, I'm very close to releasing it, and you can pretty much use it. There is potential for some tiny breaking changes, but you can already use it. So you would install npm audit-resolver at next, and that has NPM 7+ support and better yarn support. And a bunch of changes, including the fact that you can no longer run npm audit fix through this tool. on individual packages, because that's effectively not possible anymore to fix individual packages with a single command. So you have to run the entire NPM audit fix to get them fixed automatically.
Yeah. No, I love this. I'm glad I'm learning of this today. I wish I've learned of it sooner, because many times, even in my own side projects, my open source projects that I use, or maybe when I'm doing a demo or presentation and you see the NPM audit kind of errors come up, does the resolve, well, let me finish that thought. That comes up and it kind of looks like, to like the uninitiated or just folks that are not familiar, like there may be errors with my project that I might be demoing, right? And it becomes distracting. Would something
Um,
like this help kinda, if I were to
Almost.
say ignore this for a little bit, would I be able to use this in that way or no?
Almost.
Almost,
So
okay.
it's a there's a separate command you need to run in CI, and it runs npm audit in the background. And if you npm install, you get the output from the audit no matter what. And I've been trying to get this implemented as part of npm itself. It's the oldest open RFC on npm RFCs.
Wow. That's quite a
uh,
accolade to have there.
yeah, it's number 18 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, but it kind of escalated from there, and we ended up, through a very long story, we ended
Mhm.
up creating a group that was going to tackle this problem and a few other things around package vulnerability management for end users and for package maintainers. And this became a group in the OpenJS Foundation. And we didn't have enough people with enough time to really get it going. So I'm hoping to come back to it one day and maybe start running it and get some people involved. But the initial setup we had, we did some promotion, we got some people together, but we never started the regular meetings.
Hmm.
So that's still out there and waiting to get tackled, so that npm Audit-resolver or some of its functionality could be merged into npm. So
Wow,
just
that'd be awesome.
respecting the ignore file would be enough, and then the tools for creating the ignore file, there could be multiple tools. Like you could use my tool, but you could also partially automate it to put the rules in and get the output. So yeah, a bunch of things can be done that would make this process even smoother than now. Because with my tool, you need to go through the dependencies one by one. I mean, vulnerabilities in your dependencies one by one. So there's a group of dependencies that has this issue. You analyze that and make a decision. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
And
that's
then I
such
moved on to malicious scripts because as if vulnerabilities were a solved problem.
yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like, you've been on the receiving end of a malicious package, and you start wondering what it would be like to be on the publishing end of a malicious package. And then one evening, when you're bored, you try it out.
Oh boy. Alright, well, let's not
Yeah.
get too far ahead of ourselves really quick, because I think even a question that comes to my mind, but I imagine to other developers' mind, is like, how does that get to be? But before we jump into that, just a quick note, acknowledging folks in the chat that are chatting with us too, because it's part of a live stream. Be sure, if you're watching this recording, you join us live, you can get your questions, comments asked, and maybe answered and shown on the stream. Why not? Check it out. I just see Robert Tables, though, here joining us and mentioning that the last day of the sprint is when all the maybe later items plop down at the bottom of the backlog, which I think, yeah, definitely feel that quite a bit, especially when it comes to security stuff, right?
Yep.
So,
Being there.
yes. But yeah, the auto-resolver, really cool tool. Thank you for sharing that with us and bringing it to our attention. I'm glad I learned of this as well, to start using in my own projects and maybe some folks
Yep.
out there as well.
Looking
Yep.
for contributors, by the way.
Okay.
I wanna I want to share it with the world, not just in terms of usage, but maintenance as well. And there's a bunch of things we could do to make it even better and simpler.
Okay, cool. There we go. The message is out. There you have it, folks. Contributions welcome. That should just always be part of like open source, right? Every repo. Contributions welcome, as long as you follow all these guidelines, though. So
no, there's no guidelines. It's just confusing to get started, so you have to go through me anyway.
there you go. Nice. All right, cool.
So
So
I'm super willing to do it.
yeah. So getting into the malicious package stuff. So I guess the first question I have for you, ZB, is like before even getting into authoring one, right? Then like one that will eat my lunch and go to that extent. How would you get me as a developer to install a malicious package, right? That seems to me like quite a leap in the, I don't know, my workflow. Like why would I do something like that? Why would I install your malicious package?
Well, do you have an estimate of how many packages you've installed in the last month?
Well,
How many different packages?
Well, so here, what is this question
probably a
asking?
lot.
Like, do you mean though, like my direct dependencies or those like indirect
No,
dependencies?
everything.
Everything? I don't know about
That's
everything, but at least directly, probably, I don't know, 100 or more. You know, a couple
but
hundred.
then a package has an average of like 2 digit of its own dependencies, and
Yes.
then the node modules is famously known as the largest object in the universe.
Yeah, that
If
meme.
someone doesn't know that meme, Google it and you'll use it later to amuse your teammates. Anyway, there's a lot of them, and the most common technique for doing anything malicious is not at all involved with the code of the package. So the sheer fact of installing the package is enough to attack you. That's the main part of my material for today, because I have some demos where I can show that off, and that came from my exploration. So I had, while visiting a family that goes to sleep early, I've had a chance to just sit around in the evenings and be up to no good with NPM packages, and that's
You're painting
something
the perfect picture of that, the typical hacker view. Did you have a hoodie on too in the dark?
Yeah, no, I didn't have a hoodie. It was too hot inside to have a hoodie. I should have I should have done it for the photo ops.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that took me a few evenings of a lot of fun. But going back to your question, how are you going to install my package? Well, it's unlikely you're going to install a malicious package directly, unless some typo squatting. So I name it something similar, and you might type that in instead of what you intended to. This is one common way. The other common way is taking over a package, and I think if anyone's following Snyk enough to get into this live stream, you've already seen Snyk report on package takeovers, and there's been more than I can easily bring up from memory. But the idea is simple. You go in and you either steal credentials to a maintainer's account, or you convince maintainer to get you on board. And I kind of gave you an opening to do that to me with NPM Audit-resolver just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, let me contribute to this.
These things happened, and they happened quite a few times because it's just reasonable. I've wrote a package like 8 years ago, and I don't need it anymore, but I need to maintain it because I don't know, it's my baby, and I don't want to feel bad about it. But there's this person who wants to do it for me, and they seem competent. Yeah, take it, have fun with it. Keep me in the loop for the credit you get, and that's it. So that happened, and it's I even wanted to try that once, to look for a popular enough package, and just as a social engineering experiment, see if I could set up a blank account and be convincing enough to get one of the more famous developers or more depended upon developers to hand over a package.
Yeah.
And then Liran talked me out of this. Yeah.
I'm surprised he did.
Good I
Oh,
asked.
yeah, yeah.
No, it's not a good idea unless we first set up a place for these kinds of packages to go then. Because if I convince an author to get rid of the burden of maintaining a package, and then tell them, oh, I've just social engineered you, you can go back to maintaining it, that's not healthy. So
No.
we would at least have to come up with an organization that would then harbor these packages and have some trusted people come in as maintainers to at least do triage and releases if necessary.
Yeah.
So that's an idea for OpenJS Foundation if they have too much time on their hands, but I'm not doing that myself.
Yeah. And you talking through that, you remind me of, I think it was fairly recently, another, not even just social engineering or stealing credentials. Somebody just like a popular package manager or maintainer. I don't remember the name of the package, but they basically didn't renew their domain for their email address. And somebody had just renewed it and took over basically their domain and was
Yeah,
able to take their email.
that's the PHP package, I think.
Oh, that's what it was. It was
It was
PHP.
taken over that way,
Yeah.
and the person who did that to a PHP package, a Python package, and I think maybe something else. And then one of those packages started stealing credentials from environment variables. And then that person came out claiming they're a researcher, which is kind of fishy if you've already stolen credentials.
Right.
So I think they just decided to back out, or maybe they didn't know enough about responsible disclosure. But there's lessons to be learned from that.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be a security researcher, you need to make sure that your behavior is 100% white hat. So even if you do something, it needs to do no harm at all, just a proof of concept. And that's a bunch of things that I wrote that are just a proof of concept. And spoiler alert, I didn't actually publish any of those, so sorry. So I only published them to localhost. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. So just to recap, like the way you get somebody to install something malicious is either you do some social engineering to take over the credentials or something like that, or get access to contributing to these popular packages, and then you can introduce malicious code into that package that people are installing. Typo squatting is another possibility. Like maybe people accidentally type in Lodash with an extra H in there or something like that, and somebody has created a package with that name exactly to match. Still implement the same functionality of Lodash, basically probably copy it over, but then add a little bit of maliciousness to it. And then there was another one. Maybe they take over the email address to own it. Like it was kind of the third example that kind of
Well,
came to
that
mind.
actually leads to account takeover. So back to point one.
Yeah, so it's just those two avenues.
So it's either account takeover or you convince the user themselves to install your package by accident. There's also dependency confusion attacks, but I don't want to get into that. That's I think the only type of supply chain attack that I didn't fiddle with much, because others already did and did a very good job. So you can also own a package and just add a dependency to it that happens to have malicious stuff in it, but that's pretty much the same.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, all right. So let's get it. Without further ado, I think it makes sense to flow into the demo part of things. What do you say?
Yeah, sure. So remember when I said I I did some experimentation in like 2 evenings.
Yes.
So that would be the thing you're gonna see now.
Okay. Sharing your
Yep.
screen.
Okay. So this is a example Next.js app. If you don't know what Next.js app is, you should check it out. It's very nice. And let's look at the package.json. There's a bunch of scripts here. So I generated this app from their starter kit, and the only change I made is the name, I think, and then installing my malicious package. So let me go to that folder and run. Okay, so this project is Yarn, and if I do clean Yarn install now, it's not gonna reinstall everything. So I'm gonna repeat what I did earlier. Yarn add my malicious package, and that should be enough.
Okay.
Ooh, I'm getting some updates. It used to be much quicker.
No worries.
I
This is
wonder
how
what
it
else
goes, though,
I'm
right?
installing now.
Yeah.
Hope I'm not running anything malicious, because this is deliberately not protected.
Uh-oh. Stream gets
Oopsie.
shut down. Bye, everybody. We've been attacked by ourselves.
Okay, yeah, so it worked. Now, what I want to show you is that in this project, you can run like npm run dev,
Okay.
and it's gonna start all the software I've happened to have installed just now. And if I open the website, I can see that it changed. Oh, you're not going to see it because I didn't share it, but you can see it here. Now my editor is showing that something changed here in the repository. Index.js has been modified somehow, and there's this new content there. Have you seen me type it out?
No.
No, not really. So the only thing I did was install the package and then start the application, and this ugly message shows up. So I defaced my Next.js application. And this is a very simple demo. And how it's done is through my evil packages post-install scripts. So the post-install script is knowledgeable about Next.js applications, and it just takes sources and puts this bit in them. But that's just a tiny proof of concept that it can be done at all. And now the more interesting part is with this much simpler application. So let me open it up and show you. So there's a package.json here, super simple. The only thing that this app has in it is a TypeScript file. So this is a TypeScript application, as you can see. It's a bit simple, but still correct TypeScript according to my configuration, because there's a bunch of TypeScripts depending on what you put in here. So this is TypeScript, and I've made the app simple enough so that it's easy to spot anything that could have happened to it. And there's the package.json in here, and my package is somewhere in the dependencies. It doesn't necessarily have to be a direct dependency, by the way. So let me run npm CI, which is going to reinstall everything like a clean copy. And it didn't really do anything, right? You don't see any changes here. Let's look at the application. Nothing changed. Package.json, nothing changed. There's no more files here that I could have messed up, right? Okay, so what this app is doing is it requires a build step because TypeScript. So npm start, and it builds. and it's built. So there's app.js. And now my question is, when you're on a TypeScript project and you're building something, especially for the server side, but not necessarily so, do you ever look at the output of the TypeScript compiler? I'm
No,
pretty sure no one does.
I try to ignore it as much as possible, even when there's errors. Because I'm like,
Um,
TypeScript, that's not a problem. Leave me
yeah.
alone.
What about the resulting built files, like this one?
No way, because it's a bunch of gobbledygook. You know, it's like,
Yeah,
it's
does it
hard to
look
read.
correct to you?
There's eval in there, so that doesn't seem good, but I mean,
Yeah. So
yeah.
there's a comment because I couldn't stop myself.
Okay,
But
yeah.
yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's here that doesn't seem like any part of the original application
Oh, yeah.
or TypeScript bootstrap that it could have added for some of the more advanced language features, right? Compiling down. So let's go through what it is. So in case we've built a node project, I put in this bit, which is taking process.env and writing it out to a file. I might have as well taken the HTTP module and just sent it to my server.
Yeah.
So if your app that you've built from TypeScript that didn't have any changes to it or anything landed in there, you didn't have to use my dependency. I made you use it. And it's a try catch in case we're on the front end, where this is probably the shortest reflected cross-site scripting. So if we put that in code in a place where it runs at all, when you load the page with JavaScript in the hash segment of the URL, it's going to get invoked.
Oh, wow. I don't think
Yeah.
I've seen that before. That's new to me.
That's evil.
Yeah, very evil.
So I just cut off the hash in the beginning from window location hash, and everything else that's there I put through the unescape function in case there's some percent encoding, and put that into evil. And if I inject these characters into any website in a way that they actually run, you've got yourself a reflected cross-site scripting. So I introduced that into the application without modifying the application and without getting you to use my dependency.
Yeah.
You want to know how that happened?
Yeah, I want to know, like, how the heck did that happen? Like, how did you get it to where I'm not using your? Let's assume this. Take on the situation, the scenario that I'm the developer here, and you got me to use your package without me intentionally installing your package.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. So what I did was I spent 2 evenings reading through the built TypeScript compiler. So if you NPM install your TypeScript compiler, it's a big JS file that's been built from some TypeScript. And it just so happens that it's still readable if you're persistent enough. And it's very big, so it's not humanly possible to read it all yourself, but there's a bunch of tools I used. I don't think I want to share the exact method, but the result is I found a place where if you modify it, you can inject some code into the result of the compilation of your TypeScript compiler. So there's a function. I made sure this thing is added only once, and also at the beginning so that it's easier to demo, and spot, which is not the best quality if you're looking to be malicious, but for my purposes, it's good. And so what my malicious package does, it goes into the folder above, looks for TypeScript, goes in, finds the file, grabs through it, finds the part that looks like the function I'm looking for. And there's like 4 different functions named the same. So I then need to narrow it down to the one that I need to modify, and then I modify it and leave it that way. And that's all happening in a post install script. So if we go to my malicious package, The only thing that it has is a post install that runs my evil plots, which one of the functionalities there is to mess with TypeScript. So I didn't actually hack TypeScript. I hacked your local NPM installation, and instead of doing malicious things on the spot, I modified the TypeScript that you've already installed in the process.
Okay. All right. So let me kind of recap and summarize this. So one, I don't know that a lot of let's say I don't know that all web developers know that NPM has this possibility of post install and there's a pre-install script potential capabilities, right?
Yeah, install,
So
post install, and pre-install,
yeah.
and more.
Yeah, and more? Then that's news to me then. Or I'm not as familiar with it, I guess is what I'm getting at. But so post install is a thing, people. And so the idea is here, via those mechanisms we talked about earlier, where you get me to either directly or indirectly install your malicious package. It looks benign, like there's nothing, like it's not really doing anything. So I won't catch it right away necessarily just from the install, but
Yep,
via this
that's
post
the
install
point.
script, it will do what you just described in this scenario where it's looking for
Yeah.
TypeScript and trying to inject your malicious code into some files via the way TypeScript works.
Yeah, so the
Wow.
idea here was to bypass some of the security I've been introducing myself. So one of the first security measures I ever introduced for these types of attacks was to run npm install in a one-time use container, and then take the node modules folder, zip it up, send it somewhere, and destroy everything else. And that's still a good idea because not everyone's as patient as myself to read through thousands of lines of garbled JavaScript. But this was deliberately a proof of concept of an attack that would defeat that protection. So if the malicious script is trying to mess with your environment, steal some variables, or I don't know, modify your etc hosts so that you resolve a domain incorrectly in production. If you run npm install in production, it's horrible. If you run npm install in a container and you only take node modules out, it's a tiny bit better. But as you've seen, it's not better enough. So the next protection would be to try and isolate the node modules folder itself as well from stuff that it could steal. And I have one more demo of that.
Sure.
So if we go to example pipeline, this one is pretending to be a package that I'm authoring as a product. So this is something that, being an open source company, I'm giving to people, like a CLI or an SDK that they're going to install. So I want to publish it to NPM. I want it protected. Well, I do care a lot about the credentials. So I didn't set up an actual pipeline so that we would look at spinners and wait for everything to happen online and get scheduled. I set up a pipeline simulation. Okay. So I have a build script that's going to do the cleanup and then installation, and then pretend to build something, right? And then copy the result of the build. So if you look here carefully, only the dist folder and the package.json are copied to the clean publish environment. And then the publish script is the only one that has access to this super secret NPM token that you use for publishing, right?
Well, it's not so secret anymore, ZB.
Yep. So the regular way you do it is there's a secret encrypted location from which this variable gets populated in CI, and you want your publish script to run in a separate configuration, and that's the only worker that has access to this variable. So if I have a post install script, it runs in a totally separate container that doesn't have access to this, and so a malicious script would not be able to steal this variable. Does that sound plausible?
Yes, but I feel like there's a catch based on your tone there. So now you have me worried. That seems like a really great solution.
Yeah, so there's a NPM publish that runs here and a bunch of other release automation potentially, but that's all that's happening here. I'm not invoking any JavaScript that's not part of NPM.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah, and NPM was installed from a clean source. So yes, and I'm gonna steal the NPM token now. So let's take yeah, sorry.
I don't believe you. I have to see it.
Okay, let's open it up in the terminal. So the first step of this simulation is to run. So it's going to be pipeline simulation build. Okay. I hope I did reset the example correctly. Let's see. Okay, something happened, right? And there's a clean publish env folder that has the dist and the package.json and nothing else. Node modules didn't get copied over. It's only the product of my application, and we can even inspect index.js is still just my benign application that I want to publish. Okay, everything's fine.
I love that name. Useful stuff function. Very good.
Yep. I also have a project where I named the function framework, and it's an actual framework in 40 lines, and I'm looking for a good name to publish it, but framework is taken. You know, you have to write a JavaScript framework every now and then, right, to feel accomplished.
I suppose so, yeah. That's like with Twitch. A lot of developer Twitch streamers. It seems almost like a rite of passage that you have to write a chat bot at some point in time. So like if you're an NPM user, you got to build a framework, right? Or a node user rather. Yep.
All right. So now pipeline simulation publish. I'm hitting return on that, and it's what it's doing here. Like, take a look. And this is my so this is my evil server, and I got a request containing this / got this from secret location.
But it's magic. Did you tap into the publish script then somehow?
Yes, unfortunately so. This is what it's doing.
Pre-publish.
So,
oh my goodness.
There's a script that NPM runs. It's called prepublish only, and it's gonna only run it if you run npm publish to actually publish the content. And I just put the curl in there.
You sly dog, you.
Yeah. So the thing you need to do, and I have a slide about it, so maybe we could go through it.
Sure.
It's at the end of this old presentation. So where did I leave the screen share? Just a second.
Fine. Did someone say Snyk chatbot stream? Yeah, maybe. Probably. We should do a stream about that, right?
Yeah, necessarily.
Also, what I heard, actually, and Robert Tables makes a message when you were talking about thousands of lines of garbled JavaScript, and you like to read that stuff, the thought that came to my mind, ZB, was I need to hire you. So anytime that I have garbled JavaScript that I need to kind of go through, I'm just going to send it your way, and whatever your service fee is, you let me know.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of tooling to make it easier, and I think I already said that in public somewhere. So I'm gonna tell you that coverage tools are very helpful. Okay. So if you want to figure out which parts of a half ton JavaScript single file are being used when you invoke a certain functionality, you run coverage tools on it, and you look at the coverage report, and that narrows down what you need to look into.
Okay.
It's still awful. Don't get me wrong. It's still awful. But it makes it humanely possible. Okay, so my recommendation. Am I sharing?
Yeah. You want me to add it to the stream? Is it ready?
Yep.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, so yeah, that's one slide from my presentation on the topic. My recommendation is you spawn a container. You copy just the package.jsons and your log file and your npm rc, if you have one. Then you run npm CI, preferably just the production dependencies, because who knows what's in the dependencies. And if you don't need them, don't install them in there. Unless you need them for some build time stuff, then sorry. And then -- ignore scripts is like the clue for all of it. You need to stop the scripts from running. And then you run allow scripts, which I'm going to explain in a moment. And then you cache node modules. And then in a new container, you do the building. And then you only save the result of the building if that's something you want to publish. And then if you want to deploy your application or publish it to NPM, you create another container, so part of your pipeline, a new workflow or something. And you, first of all, you check out your repository again. So instead of taking the package.json that you put in cache, don't put any package.json in cache, because I'm going to hack you with the pre-publish script. Just take a clean new copy of your package.json from your repository, because that's the code you audited, and it didn't get into someone else's hands yet. So then you get the dist folder that you built before, and you check out the clean package.json, and that's when you're ready to publish. Same with code that you didn't actually need to build. Don't cache it from the previous step, because no matter what technology you're using, if you have an npm install running as part of your build process in one container in your CI, and there's like a Java or C# build running next to it, but on the same machine, like first or after, it's always going to be possible to inject code into that application from your npm dependencies if the malicious scripts actually run. Okay, so ignore scripts, and just in case, isolate everything. So that's one thing.
Sure, before you step further through that, on that last step there, ZB, to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So the idea to help us avoid that pre-publish like avenue for attackers to use to their advantage, we're copying over just this folder. We're doing a clean checkout, but wouldn't it still run like if it's still reading your project's package.json for the publish? Well,
but
because
you didn't put that script there, right? And if we're assuming your content of your Git repository is clean and safe, right? Because if it's not, it's already out the window. There's no reason to be secure if you can't secure access to your Git sources. Right.
For sure.
So assuming this Git source is correct, you pull clean, fresh package.json from there instead of copying it over from the previous steps. So just minimize what you copy over from previous steps.
I guess what I'm trying to make sure that's connecting the dots in my brain on this. In the previous steps, when you run like npm install and stuff like that, it could it's pulling in the package.json of your malicious package that has that pre-published script in it, right? And so if you were to
I've added the malicious script into your package.json. So this checkout here, or this checkout that happens here before installing potentially, but mostly this. When you then run your installation or a malicious build script, it could modify your package.json to sneak the bit of script in there. Yes.
Gotta add that, right?
Yeah, that was intentional.
Okay, so you use All right, you use avenues in your package JSON that allows you to run scripts that will then find my package JSON to modify it
Yes.
during
Yes.
build time. And then if I go publish, so you modify my pre-publish
Mhm.
script, you add that, let's say, maybe I don't even have one, you add that, and then that's where you have that avenue. So the idea is you do all your install stuff in a separate isolated environment, and then
Mhm.
when you're ready to do the deploy, you're starting with a fresh version of your package JSON. Even though in the past one that you might have still had the access to manipulate my package JSON, we're not using that instance of it to run the
Yeah.
deploy portion of it. We're going to go get a clean setup of that again.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
So
Yeah.
the package JSON file is not just metadata. You need to think of it as code.
Yeah.
And if you want to make sure that you're not running any malicious code, you need to take your code from secure sources. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. You're going to
And
go to the
so,
next
so now
slide.
let's get positive about some things. So first, how do you know what you can and can't ignore? There's an app for that. It's called Can I Ignore Scripts? And it's mine. So
Nice.
I spent these 2 evenings hacking on the script that can attack TypeScript compiler installed locally and corrupted. And then I spent like 2 weeks building up this script and scanning some of the NPM most popular packages for post-install scripts and overall install scripts, and then building a database of stuff that you can safely ignore and stuff that you need to keep, because uh, they're not all malicious, right? If NPM
Mhm.
has this feature, it's needed for something. And a lot of packages need it to compile stuff, for example. So there's packages which you might have in your dependencies that you need to keep running their post-install scripts. So the idea is to create a whitelist of scripts that you are allowed to run, and then run only those. And you can use npm rebuild and give names of packages that you want to rebuild, which means to run their post-install scripts exactly. But that's still not enough. And we're running out of time, so I'm not going to demo how I could even hack this. But I want to tell you that there's this lovely thing called Lava Mode, and it's been built by Kumavis. And then I recently joined the team, and I'm also contributing to Lava Mode. And one thing, and the only thing we've improved since I joined is this capability. So there's a tool called Allow Scripts in Lava Mode. If you
Is that
install that,
is it on GitHub Lava Moat?
yep,
Okay.
that's the
Just making
Lava
sure.
Mode.
So I could
You
share the
can
link in
link
chat.
to the entire organization because there's a bunch of fun stuff to read there. But yes, this is still early days of Lava Mode because it's still not very popular. I'm trying to fix that right here, right now. But yes, it is ready to use, and we're gonna start improving the documentation and making it more hype-inducing very soon. But the idea with allow scripts is that you run the setup. Allow scripts will generate your policy and put it in the package.json, but it will also install a funny tool called pre-install always fail. And now, if you try to install your dependencies with install scripts enabled, it's going to fail that process as soon as possible, so that nothing has a chance to attack you. And that's not the good part. The good part is it's going to run the selected scripts, but it's going to run the right scripts because, and I have a demo, so maybe, I don't know, invite me next time for a demo of that. But
I was
if
going
you
to
run
ask you.
npm
Yeah.
rebuild bignum and grpc, I can create a malicious package named whatever else that would still run its post-install script if I run npm rebuild bignum. It is possible. Barely anyone even knows how to do it, and that's not something I'm gonna share here. It's a known thing. It's a known vulnerability. I'm not gonna share it here because it's really hard to find. But Lava Mode is protecting against that. And it's the only thing that can run post-install scripts and protect against that. So I hope it's convincing, maybe,
Yeah.
to to get
Yeah.
it installed. And there's a bunch of other stuff that's also part of Lava Mode. Yeah, we're running out of time. And I want to tell you that if you run Can I Ignore, it sometimes says you need to check some dependency instead of just keeping or ignoring it. So that means it's not in the database. And that means you can go to my GitHub, find the Can I Ignore Scripts repository. There's a data.json file, and you can make a nice pull request adding that dependency to the list. Or if you're looking for inspiration, what to research, there's a to-do section in the data.json of stuff that I managed to identify as containing install scripts and needing a review to make sure that they're necessary. But the whole idea of Can I Ignore Scripts is just giving you a list of scripts that you can safely ignore, because what if you're running the scripts from core.js, for example. Core.js famously uses the post install script only to ask that you consider hiring the developer for some cool work, or maybe donate to the project, right? And if someone took over core.js and you kept running this script, you would get hacked. But if you know that this script is unnecessary and everything is still going to work without it, you can remove it from the list of allowed scripts, or explicitly say no, don't run it. And you're not even risking that. So I find this valuable to make the list shorter and easier to review and less prone to account takeovers. But good news. I think we can stop sharing now. Yeah, there's good news.
Starting, we're starting the week off on a Monday, first thing in the morning here on the East Coast, with just lots of scariness, ZB.
Oh, well.
No, but
yeah, there's a lot of good news. So first off, there's Lava Mode. Another good news is NPM has introduced mandatory two-factor authentication for top maintainers. And they did that before, but it was like 2 digits or something, like really top of the top. And now they're expanding it to most dependent on packages and most downloaded packages. And there's a bigger number of those. So a few more iterations of that, and it's going to be super hard to take over an account for something that's at all popular. So the return on investment is diminishing there. And so that means we're going to get more targeted attacks and less blanket attacks, which is good for general public, right? And one more thing, I want to tease something I'm going to do next. And maybe I just so want to demo it. Okay, no. I'm going to stop myself. But
we'll have you. So here's the thing. How about, are you open to joining us another time? We'll schedule another stream with you, and we can go into that.
Let's schedule another one, because I'm getting ready to show some of the new stuff I'm working on. And if you've ever heard of compartments and hardened JavaScript and secure ECMAScript, any of this rings a bell?
No.
Yeah, probably not, because it's a coming up standard, which is only now a proposal to TC39, not yet stage 2, even for a subset of it. But we're really working on it, and there's a working proof of concept that's super hard to use now, but it can be used. And Lava Mode is actually using it for some more protections that I want to show later. And effectively, it means, like, imagine you have a string of text, you pass it to the eval function, and you run it. Does that sound like a good thing if you get that text from someone else?
No, definitely not.
No. Okay. So assuming you can, you want to do that because they wrote something that does interesting computation, and you want to run it as part of your application, and you want to avoid all of the possible negative consequences, there's a way to do that. You can run it in a compartment, lock down your environment, and you can run it as part of your application. You can wrap the compartment around a package that you don't trust, and it's going to run someone else's code. And if that code reaches out to your globals or tries prototype pollution, it's just not going to work.
That's good. That'd be helpful.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it exists. If anyone wants spoilers, just look at my recent activity on GitHub for the last few months. But I'm going to come back then and tell you more about it.
Yes, let's do that. I'm taking notes to bring you on. I captured all the links to the stuff that we shared on stream today. I'll be sure to put this. These are recorded, folks. So those of you that are joining us live and you want to go back and reference this, they'll be up on the YouTube channel, Snyk, youtube.com/snyksec, Snyk SEC. And I'll be sure to add all the timestamps and links in the description below. So with that, yeah, we're out of time for today, but for real, ZB, like this was super enlightening for me. I imagine for lots of other folks that are watching this now live and the recording. So thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to having you on again, man.
Sure. Yeah. I've got a bunch of stuff to show, and I'm going to make it easier to understand before that, because yeah, it's super difficult at this point, but I'll do my best.
Sure. So if folks want to get in touch with you, I've got your Twitter here, twitter.com/NAUGTUR to follow along with your work there over on Twitter.
Yep.
And your
And if you
GitHub.
Google that phrase, by the way, you will only find me, because it's like
Oh, yeah?
XKCD. Only I use this combination of letters.
Sweet. There you go. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might find too much, though.
Next time, note to myself, next time I want to ask you about the name, because it's so hard to come up with unique names, you know? So, especially when you have a common name like myself, Brian Clark, I was like, what am I going to do here? There's so many of this people with this name.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about that. There you go, folks. You can go check out ZB over on GitHub and Twitter, among other places, or just Google him. There you go. And find out some of the cool stuff that he's working on. Get a sneak peek of what he plans to demo in a future stream right here on SnykLIVE. Looking forward to having you again.
Cool. Yeah.
All
See
right,
you next
folks.
time.
Yes, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. If you're on Twitch, stick around. We'll go raid another developer streamer just shortly here. And we'll see you in another stream in the future. Be sure to
Thanks for
follow, like,
having
and
me.
subscribe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got to do the YouTube thing, right? You know? All right, folks. Have a good one. See ya.